And the other thing, when we look at depression with concussions, it's not my kid took a concussion today, they're depressed tomorrow. It's my kid took a concussion today, they are now at increased risk of depression 10 years down the road if this wasn't properly evaluated and treated.
Hey friends, welcome back. You're listening to the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. This is what we all said we needed when we first became parents. Remember that? Where's the handbook for this? I'm your host, Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and I bring together experts in the fields of health, nutrition, parenting, and more to help you who truly want to raise healthy, independent kids get the information you need. Parenting really is the toughest and most rewarding job in the world. Thank you for joining me to consult this Healthy Parenting Handbook. Today, my guest and I are talking about those knocks to the head. Whether your kid has already had a concussion, or they play contact sports and you worry they might get a concussion, or if you just want good brain health for your family, whether that means proper brain development as your kids grow and become adults, mental health for the whole family, and the old idea of let's avoid cognitive decline, please and thank you, as we enter into our more golden years. Brain health is so important, as important, if not maybe more important than physical health. Dr. Spencer Zimmerman and I are going to talk today a lot about concussions and also about building healthy brains. Dr. Zimmerman helps individuals restore and optimize their brain function. His passion for integrative brain and body health comes from his spouse's issues with post-concussion syndrome and gastrointestinal issues from a severe problem with gluten. His book is called Brain Reset: 7 Steps to a Healthier Brain. It's a bestseller, and Dr. Zimmerman is uniquely cross-trained as both a chiropractor and a nurse practitioner. He's the owner of an integrative clinic in the Tampa, Florida area called Peak Brain and Body. And I walked away from this interview with a short to-do list for my own family. I hope that you feel the same way. Dr. Zimmerman, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I am glad to be talking about concussions because it's something we've experienced in my own family, and it's one of the many areas I think that modern conventional medicine is falling short. And it's really unfortunate. So tell us, you have a very special reason for specializing in concussions. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So early on in school, I really got attracted to why, why are things working? And so I went down the brain path. And as I'm working on this brain injury clinic, I'm coming home celebrating man, help someone else who's been dealing with concussion issues for 10 years, 20 years. They've seen, dozens of different providers. And one day my wife is like, that's not normal. And I was like, what do you mean that's not normal? I already knew she had headaches, but that improved a lot from pulling gluten out of her diet, making those nutritional changes. But just some of the stuff with the dizziness and motion sickness, ongoing neck pain, we were trying the chiropractic stuff, but it wasn't really working. And she actually threw up during part of the treatment they tried to do with her one time. And I go through her past and it's like, you had 3 different concussions that were never once evaluated or treated that all stemmed from back. The first one was when she was a teenager at the age of 13, and then another one in high school, and then another one after graduation. But unfortunately, and we'll talk about this in a lot more detail, when you get a concussion as a teenager, especially when you're a female, there's a lot of symptoms you can have, and it gets blamed on puberty. It gets blamed on, you're changing friends, you're going from one grade to the next. And it was at that point in time when I realized my wife had concussions that were never diagnosed or treated. I was like, wow, I'm treating these people who know they are dealing with it. And over the course of my career, I think it's about 90% of people who are still dealing with concussion issues, they don't even realize it's from a concussion. They're going after the symptoms of the concussion versus the cause of those symptoms being a concussion.
You bet we're going to dive deeper into a lot of this because I'm amazed. So you didn't have how many concussions have you had in your prenuptial conversations with your wife?
Yeah, I wasn't that smart. I knew enough to know that the doctor telling her to drink Mountain Dew every day and eat chips for her chronic headaches just didn't make sense. I mean, I was a dumb college student, but I at least knew that was off. So we started there.
Off is a very nice word to use in that situation, Dr. Zimmerman. When you talked about your wife saying that's not normal, I thought this was just normal for people. And when you got to the part where people brushed her symptoms under the rug and said it's adolescence, it's puberty, it's just, again, it's basically another way of saying normal in heavy air quotes. My hair stood on end. That really gets under my skin because it's so common that people, children, teens, adults, their symptoms are minimized by the establishment, by doctors. And I'm so sorry that happened to your wife. What a blessing that she married you. And it was literally what you were, being successful in with your life's work. Were you able to help her get rid of these headaches and dizziness?
Yeah, she's doing a lot better now. Every now and then there are still flare ups because when you have, like, we homeschool, okay, we've got 5 girls. And, there's times when you open up the car door and a stroller falls out and hits you in the head, right? There are times you're doing things at the park, with like monkey bars with the kids, and you bump into stuff where you can go into a little bit of a flare. But we've got it under control. If something does happen with a flare, she bounces back really, really fast. It's not an ongoing issue that keeps impacting her.
It's amazing that she was living with post-concussion syndrome, basically, and didn't know it. Am I hearing you say, just in that story you just told about strollers and monkey bars, is it true then that once someone has had a concussion, their head or their brain or both are more susceptible to smaller, minor bumps?
Yes, especially if you've never got it properly treated. If you think about your brain like you would a sprained ankle, right? Those of us that played sports, right? Like I played soccer, you tweak your ankle enough times and it gets to the point where it's just kind of stupid about what can cause you to re-sprain that ankle. And you're just like, come on. And the same thing is true if you've had concussions. It doesn't take as much to reconcuss when the brain's been injured enough times.
Makes perfect sense. We had a concussion incident with my youngest. He's 10 now, but when he was 3, he just walked off one single step, fell down, and kind of hit his head on a cement patio. It seemed like a really minor incident, but he absolutely got a concussion. And so he's had 2 now. He had a second one falling off his bike. And we're fortunate that we have, like you, a chiropractic neurologist or functional neurologist here in the area. So he's kind of learned the exercises, but that's one reason I was so excited to work with you today, because I know, well, maybe you should tell me, if I had gone to my pediatrician with a concussion, what would I be told and why does it fall short?
Most people, if you go to your pediatrician, at most they're going to tell you like, hey, you know what? If your kid's complaining of symptoms, you may need to give them like Tylenol. If they've got a headache, they may be a little bit more tired. You may want to pull away some of the sensory stimulation for a very brief period of time. But don't worry, expect all the symptoms to go away and your kid should be normal, within a few days or a week. And that's really where it's left. There's no follow-up. There's no real evaluation or treatment. And unfortunately, that's the extent of what most people are going to experience.
Obviously, that's not what you have been doing for your life's work. So catch us up a little bit, like post-concussion, especially immediately post-concussion, because hopefully parents we're talking to, their kids haven't had an unresolved concussion, but we'll address that too. So if I'm a parent and I realize, like this is the day one of my kids had a concussion, what are some immediate steps that people should take?
Very first thing, it's to observe their behaviors, especially the younger your kid, right? When they're really little, they're 3, they're 5, they're not going to tell you much. They're not going to be like, hey, mom, dad, I've got a headache. You really have to look at behavioral changes. Are they more moody? Are they angry? Has their appetite changed? Are they maybe a little bit more clumsy? So that's what you're really looking at with younger kids versus teenagers. They may tell you, a little bit, but once again, also look for those social behavioral clues. You know, how is their schoolwork? You see a lot of teenagers with concussions who haven't recovered. Their grades really, really take a hit, but in that really acute phase, you're looking for some of those symptoms, just do they seem off? Like they're sleep deprived essentially. And you're like, wow, it's like when you go sleep deprived, your brain just doesn't seem as sharp. Look for some of that stuff with your kids. And then what you don't want to do is you don't want to sensory deprive them. Now, I understand everyone is just like, wait, what? Like, if you're like me, right? We all grew up on sensory deprivation was the only treatment. It was like, just go sit in a dark room, don't do anything. But what have they found in the research? They have found if you do that, you actually prolong recovery from a concussion compared to if you do some light physical exercise. Now, that doesn't mean, right, you should put your kids in sports and have them do risky behaviors where they could take another concussion. But if you have like a stationary bike at home or something like that, that they can gently get their heart rate up a little bit without pushing into the symptom realm, that actually helps to speed up a concussion recovery.
When you said sensory, I went screens. So you're talking just in general, like turning down life, turning off the lights, laying down in bed. Would a walk, like a gentle walk, be fine as well if we don't have a stationary bike?
Yeah, a gentle walk is great, and just start off with a couple of minutes. Always err on the side of safety, because if we were all kids once, we usually never brought up any issues until we had to. So err on the side of, hey, this is going to be too little, because you recover from too little. You don't want to do is do too much. You're on a 30-minute walk when you should have been doing 10 minutes, and your kid comes back and like, oh, they've got a raging headache, and they just want to lay down the rest of the day because too much was done.
Okay, so pain-free, gentle movement. What about screens, Doc?
Screens are one of the worst things for concussion recovery and just in society in general. We were not meant for the amount of screen time that we've got. And so screens are definitely a big thing that prolongs concussion recovery, spikes symptoms. And so whenever I'm doing school plans for people, is I have them get off the screens. And I say, look, if you've got to be able to do schoolwork, you need printed material. That is what you need. You will last longer with that without causing symptoms compared to if you're doing stuff with screens. So please, no screens. If your kids have cell phones or tablets, take them away. They don't get it. And that's before we even talk about people can get what's called convergence insufficiency, which is basically when something comes near to them, their eyes no longer coordinate in the way they should. Pretty common following a concussion. And unfortunately, screens primarily work in a state of convergence. And it's one of the big reasons why people are like, oh man, I've got these headaches like right here when I'm doing stuff. And if you've had concussions, you're probably thinking the same thing. Like, wow, when I'm on a computer screen or I'm trying to focus too long, I get this head pressure right between my eyes.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. No screens. And I've heard, we saw it in my own little guy. Again, we were trying to keep him like out of the backyard, off the trampoline. He was 3. And so of course we turned a show on. It absolutely sent him backward. He held his head and did exactly what you described, wanted to lay down. So he did a lot of perler bead crafts that first couple days after the concussion, just moving his fingers. So that's tricky for kids in school. So much of school is on screens now. Are there specific exercises that you do? So we've talked about kind of what not to do. What do people do? What should people do then, other than light exercise, to help their brain get back on track from a concussion?
Yeah, so there's some stuff that you can do at home versus there's stuff where really you should see a provider, because if you do try to do all the neurological exercises on your own and you don't understand it, you do run risk of making people worse. Okay. And you don't want to do that. So lots of people with concussions, they do develop issues with sleep. So sleep is a time your brain, it repairs, it reduces inflammation, and it helps with recovery. So please make sure your kid is getting good sleep, right? Hopefully they are, but if not, maybe some melatonin, maybe some CBD, valerian root. There's different things like that. Sleep is a big make or break thing. So please make sure sleep is good. We've already talked about physical exercise. Next, breaks throughout the day as needed. So I don't want you to do nothing, but also don't do so many things that you're just powering through. You've got to sub out of the day-to-day routine. And then lastly, I want you to think about the food your kids are eating. Our brain is made up of fats. And so getting good, healthy fats, making sure blood sugar is staying stable is super, super important with recovery. Because if you are eating the right way, you're getting good essential fatty acids, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, olive oil, and stuff like that. That's going to help reduce inflammation, and it's going to help your brain shift into a state of repair and recovery. Versus for getting the ultra-processed foods, it's more inflammation, and then it's ultimately going to prolong recovery for a lot of people. So those are some of the big things that can be done at home. And then beyond that, you've got things that can be done in a provider's office, which may include eye movement-based therapies, balance therapies, hand-eye coordination, low-level laser therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There's even things beyond that that could be done.
Yeah, Dr. Zimmerman, what kind of a professional do people need to look for? Because we've already established if you just go to your pediatrician, you're going to get a little pat on the head and be sent home to a dark room.
Yeah, sometimes you're lucky enough you can find one provider who can do all of this stuff for you. Other times you do have to combo it. Because even though I do functional neurology, which is most widely utilized by chiropractors, not all of those that do functional neurology are going to talk to you about your nutrition and try to get you on good supplements for your brain. So sometimes you need both someone that is functional neurology, but someone who also understands functional medicine from a brain-based perspective. It is also good for most people to even do like chiropractic care because we do get a lot of neck injuries with many of these concussions, okay? Not everyone responds well to chiropractic with a concussion. There is a group that it will make worse, but most people can absolutely be a positive add-on to getting the help and answers you need. Now, I get it. There's not a lot of people that do functional neurology out there. Some states have a lot more than others. There are some physical therapists that do like vestibular rehab. Try it out, but also realize that, sometimes you need stuff more specific than things that are just generically done. Because unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of the time. It's the same protocol rolled out for everyone and not individualized based upon testing and examination findings.
Speaking of testing, what role does imaging play with the concussions? Do people need to get some sort of brain scan to see what's going on?
So this is one of the biggest things because most people, if your kid plays a sport, specifically when they're like middle school or high school, you'll often go to the emergency room and get a CT scan. Know that 1 million out of a million times, if you have a concussion, your CT scan will be normal, okay? CT scans are not made to pick up a concussion. They're made to say, do you have a bleed? Is there a fracture? Is there something beyond a concussion? Even standard MRIs are not meant for concussions. Now, there are advanced MRIs such as DTI scans that are available in any bigger city. These pick up some concussions, but not all. So don't rush for imaging if it's a concussion, right? We're looking for things beyond that's like, wow, they're really slurring their speech bad. There's some facial droop. There's lots of vomiting going on. There's numbness one side of the body where we're worried about bleeds. That's when we really want the imaging. So, and I see it all the time in Facebook groups who are like, they won't send me for an image. It's like, don't worry about it. Because the worst thing is about this, it's not that you get sent for an image. It's the message that gets conveyed to you from the emergency room. It's a, hey, Emily, we just did your daughter's CT scan and it's normal. Everything looks okay. That does a number on you mentally. And it tells a lot of people, oh, my daughter is fine. No, they're not fine. It just means they don't have a bleed or a fracture. It does not mean they don't have a concussion and that this still shouldn't be further evaluated. So I really wish they would say is, hey, Emily, we did your daughter's CT scan. Great news. There's no bleed or fractures. Now she does have a concussion. We are not the right place to evaluate and treat a concussion though. So here is a name of a place to go and get that further evaluation.
Oh, could we just order that kind of care off the menu, right? Like, it's so true. And this is not really the place to soapbox about waste in the medical system, but I'm guessing a lot of kids who have pretty minor to medium concussions are getting CT scans at great expense to the insurance, which, by the way, we all pay for ultimately. And they're not necessary if there's really not a concern about a brain bleed or a fracture. So this was, for me, incredibly helpful. I mean, we happen to use a health sharing ministry, so we're self-pay. So any, any big medical expense is a decision. And we ask, is this really necessary? I wish everyone would live that way. But someday, maybe we'll all be good stewards of, our collective finances and health. You mentioned having an impact on sort of the moms or the parents' mentality. And that brings us really to this idea of mental health. I think people really think that concussions are like this physiological structural thing. Obviously, it has to do with the brain, but that mental health is different. Yeah, it's the brain, but it's more like, the chemical part of it. But you say that mental health is impacted by concussions. Tell us more.
Yeah. So when you look at mental health, especially when we look at kids and teenagers, we know if someone has a concussion, they have a higher risk of anxiety, depression, oppositional defiant disorder, ending up in a mental hospital. Okay. Not just counseling, but going to a mental hospital. They have a higher likelihood of turning to alcohol and other drugs of abuse. They have a higher risk of attempting and completing suicide, right? So concussions are not these small little things. And the other thing, when we look at depression with concussions, it's not my kid took a concussion today, they're depressed tomorrow. It's my kid took a concussion today, they are now at increased risk of depression 10 years down the road if this wasn't properly evaluated and treated.
That's a really big deal. Is that a physiological brain cause effect? Is it because life with a concussion can kind of suck? Like your wife said, I'm always dizzy, and you know what I mean? Like, or do we not know? Do we just know that there is a correlation?
It's both, actually, and the worst thing we've done in mental health is we've tried to be like, you've got mental health over here, and then you've got the brain over here. It's like, no, the brain is the brain, right? It's all about connections. And that's why everyone's talking about neuroplasticity right now. How does the brain learn and change and adapt based upon input, right? So you can have a concussion that disrupts the input, but also you see if kids eat highly processed foods, right? That comes in, creates inflammation. That also changes neuroplasticity because through inflammation. So there's a variety of ways to change the connections. And yes, when you change the connections, you do also impact neurotransmitter functionality. And so it's not one or the other. It's a combination of both. And so, yes, the concussions do cause depression, even independent of what happens. But it's also important to know that if someone has pre-existing depression, their likelihood of ongoing concussion symptoms is higher than someone who didn't have pre-existing depression.
Wow. So it's a cycle for sure, both directions. I still want to talk about your book, 7 Steps to a Healthier Brain, but I have one more just loop that I need to close for myself, because you talked about your wife and patients in your practice having decades, years and decades of unresolved post-concussion syndrome. And I'm just wondering, like, whenever I hear podcasts with medical professionals, and you walk out and you look at your children and you go, who's got what? Like who has the thing I just heard about? So the parents are all thinking, oh, could some of my kids, or could my husband, or could my best friend or my sister have, post-concussion symptoms that we never connected? Can you tell us a couple red flags that you would say that, this is a rabbit hole that your busy brain is worth going down if you see this in your child or your friend?
Yeah, so let's use my average patient that comes in. They're about 5 years out from a concussion. They've kind of brushed it aside. They're coming in with fatigue. They're coming with brain fog, so focus, concentration, word finding, memories off. And sometimes they've got neck pain and headaches. Other times they don't. They've done functional medicine, natural medicine. They've done supplements. They've done chiropractic. And they're like, honestly, I'm doing everything that Google says I should be doing and everything my provider says I should be doing, but yet I'm not getting better. And then as I'm reviewing their history, it's like car accident 5 years previously, right? A skiing injury, whatever it is, a sports injury 5 years previously. And it's like, well, when did all this start? I guess it was about 5 years ago, but I didn't think a concussion could impact you that long. I'm like, those only can last a week or two.
Are there ever people who don't even know they had a concussion? Especially like a car accident. I suppose a concussion could go undiagnosed if you weren't completely knocked out.
There are people who, because of what they're told in the medical system, both traditional medicine and even complementary medicine, because let's face it, most chiropractors and stuff like that are going to miss concussions, is they're going to hone in on your symptoms and be like, hey, you got a whiplash injury. And when in reality, maybe it was a concussion, but because their training was so much on whiplash, that's what they're telling you. So there's people who have all the symptoms, right? So when we look at the most common symptoms of a concussion, chronic fatigue, brain fog, headaches, concentration, focus issues, and then all things mental health is about 40%, and sleep issues. And so if you have a few of those, then you know what? Possibly. And the other thing is people often think like, well, I have to lose consciousness. You do not have to lose consciousness. That's like 10% of all concussions. And I think that's the other thing that prevents people from even realizing that could be a concussion, is they've kind of got this standard in their mind that if something doesn't happen to this severity, I could not have suffered a concussion. So, and this is where it really comes to working with a qualified provider, because not everyone with those lists of symptoms has a concussion. You have to have a plausible mechanism of injury. And so it's working through all of the diagnostic criteria is really what lets us know, like, yes, this is, or no, it's not.
And if someone's, mom intuition is saying, I think we have enough on that list. And I do remember, a bike accident, or there was that one time on the soccer field where it just seemed like, boy, both heads were wrung, it's probably worth looking up a functional neurologist or a functional chiropractor and having a consult. Would you think?
Absolutely. Going there, for us, we are going to do eye movement testing, balance testing, and not everyone does brainwave testing, but we do that. And look, balance in the eyes, they do not lie. Okay. If there are issues with eye movements, and then it often ends up causing symptoms for the person being evaluated, then it's pretty predictable. Hey, look, there are things going on impacting the health of the brain. And when we get this addressed, your kid or you, whoever's getting the evaluation, should be feeling a lot better.
That's fantastic. Your book is called 7 Steps to a Healthier Brain, which is this book for post-concussion or for everyone to make sure that our brains are as healthy and robust as possible?
This is really for everyone, because when we look at brain-based issues, those are the fastest growing things we're facing in the United States, from neurodevelopmental disorders to acquired brain injuries with concussions to long COVID impacting the brain, which the book wasn't even written for, to strokes, Parkinson's, dementias. At the end of it, there are 4 things that happen in unhealthy brains. They don't connect as well as they should. They don't produce and use energy. They're inflamed. And then there's issues with vascular, so blood flow and oxygen. And if you understand what's happening with that, no matter what criteria or bucket someone wants to be in, those all have to be addressed. The only difference is how much does one influence one person versus the other.
So it sounds like preemptively, we can tackle some of those areas and make sure that our family has the healthiest possible brains. Tell us a little bit about how parents should support a child's developing brain.
Yeah, it's really through the nutrition. There was a research study looking at college football players who all they did was take a certain blend of fish oils. So DHA was the high dose. It was like 2 grams. EPA was about 500 milligrams. And all they did was take that through the football season. And markers of brain damage was less in the group that took that compared to those that didn't. So just fueling your kids' brains with what they need during the season and before the season is important. It's like I tell everyone, when's the best time to learn to fight? It's before you get in a fight, right? So when's the best time to get your brain healthy? Well, if you know your kid's going to play soccer, football, hockey, whatever it is, then guess what? Do it preemptively and don't say, well, none of that's happening. Well, your kid's going to ride a bike. You're going to hop in a car. Cars are the, number 2 leading cause of concussions anyways. So you're more likely to suffer concussion from a car accident than your kid probably is from sports, really. So do it preemptively, because the stronger you are walking into it, usually the better you're going to be walking out of it.
I love that. That's a writer downer. The stronger you are walking in, the better you are walking out. So you've got 7 steps to a healthy brain. Obviously, everyone should just go buy the book and read the book, but we're doing a podcast here. Give us a little preview. What is something, a step that parents can sneak out of your book?
Yeah. So, I already know you talk a lot with people about eating healthy and everything like that. So I'm not going to go to that, but turn any exercise into a brain-based exercise. So lots of people are doing stuff with resistance bands and weights. Well, just do it with standing 1 foot in front of the other, or do it sitting down on a yoga ball, right? Because now everything, when people talk about core strength, core conditioning is a neurological brain-based thing, because our brain reflexively controls our core. So anything we do with that is going to be good for our brain and the balance centers are highly susceptible with concussions.
Fascinating. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around this, because it sounds like you could apply this to anything. So 1 foot in front of the other. What's going on in the brain when I do that? That's not a big change.
Yeah. So, when you do 1 foot in front of the other, that targets a part of the brain known as your cerebellum. So do 1 foot in front of the other, eyes open, and then do it again with eyes closed. The amount of people, right? You'll probably have people trying it as they're listening to this. Just try it. Stand with 1 foot in front of the other, eyes open for 10 seconds, and then eyes closed. You should be able to do that without falling. And a lot of people with concussions, or their brain's just not as healthy as it should be from a number of reasons, when they close their eyes, they're like, wow, I started swaying a ton more, or I couldn't do it. Like my average patient comes in, I'm like, how's your balance? It's great. It's great. And then I have them do the simple balance test, and they're like, what the? That was horrible. And guess what? If your kid's playing sport, just record them. Record them with your cell phone. Rip out your phone and say, I'm going to record your balance before you ever start playing. So if I think anything potentially happened to you, I've got that video and I can have you repeat it again. It's like, okay, Tim, you fell none with eyes open and eyes closed with either foot and back. Now you took a potential concussion and you just fell 3 times. Like that's okay. Now you're like, I need to go and get some extra help. So these are little screens that you can do. No, I'm not trying to get you to be the doctor, but these are things you can do at home to know where your kid was at, because that's the worst thing about returning kids to play is they've never had proper baseline testing. How do you return someone back to a pre-existing level when you don't have a pre-existing level.
Those are so practical. That is, I mean, seriously, parents, like if you've got seasons coming up where your kids are in contact sports, put a little reminder right now in your iCal or your Google Calendar to take that baseline video. It's going to take 10 seconds. It sounds like putting one foot in front of another during exercise is both an exercise to strengthen the brain and also can be a sort of a test or a screen. If you close your eyes and you're really struggling, you realize, oh my goodness, I might actually need a little help then. Fascinating. I'm going to have to read more of the book, turn every exercise into a brain exercise, because I'm all about efficiency. So if I can get a 2-for-1, yes, please. For sure. Is any like crossing the midsection, is that brain exercise as well?
Crossing the midsection, absolutely. And just, I love resistance bands. Resistance bands are some of the best for the brain because our brain likes novel things. So if you walk outside and it's sunny, it only really seems sunny for the first few minutes, right? After that, your brain's like, you know what? I've been here. It's not as bright as it used to be. But if the clouds keep coming and going, you're like, oh, wait, nope, it's brighter. Oh, now it's not. Oh, it's brighter. Now it's not. So if you do things with resistance bands, right? Let's say you've got it, you're stepping on it with one foot and you're just like, hey, I'm just going to do figure eights, or I'm going to write the alphabet with this. And as I write the alphabet, I'm going to blend in different joints with my elbow and my shoulder. So I'm not only strengthening my shoulder, I'm helping my core, I'm helping my elbow, all those muscles there. But you're also stimulating the brain because you're providing something that's novel and it's constantly changing. The brain loves new information. And it's why if you've done stuff for too long, you're just like, oh man, I just kind of zone out when I'm doing it. When you zone out, it doesn't do anything for the brain. Your brain's like, I need something new. I need something fresh. So mix it up. Your brain will thank you because a lot of people, yeah, there are those that exercise for cardiovascular fitness and it'll look good. But a lot of people, that's not enough of a driver. Do this for your brain health because exercise is the best thing we've got to not only reduce your risk of concussion, but also to help your kid's brain develop. Movement drives brain development. But then on the other end, it's one of the things that is unanimously known, like, hey, this is probably one of the best ways we have to prevent any neurodegenerative condition is through exercise. It's a must.
And how many of us, I agree with what you say that sometimes, hey, you should go exercise so that you don't gain weight, blah, blah, blah. But go exercise so that you can remember your kids' names when you're 80. In all seriousness, people are very scared of things like mental degeneration and dementia. It's very unnerving to see others go through that. And we put ourselves in that position and say, I don't want that to happen to me. So it's very empowering to know that there are steps we can take as children, teenagers, young adults, middle-aged adults, whatever, to build our brains. Dr. Zimmerman, I'm all about kids cooking, of course, and you've mentioned a little bit about nourishing well and that nutrition is the key to reducing inflammation. What would you say to parents as they're getting their kids working in the kitchen? Are there any like brain double exercises that kids can do while they're helping cook?
I mean, it depends on the age of the kids, right? So I've got 5 girls. The youngest is 3, the oldest is turning 12, and they love helping my wife cook. And it's letting them take an active role in it because as they learn to follow steps, as they learn to measure, as they learn to do things new, that's good for brain development. But then on the other side, as a medical provider, there's one thing people dread more than anything else, and it's actually cleaning up their nutrition. I mean, you can have them buy $2,000 worth of supplements. You can give them any pill. You can even talk to them about surgery and they like won't blink. But you're like, I need you to change your nutrition. And they're like, what? No, that's too hard. And so by getting your kids in the kitchen and letting them cook, it's the same thing my kids are learning now, is they learn, and I don't even know where it came from, but there's this ridiculous myth that eating healthy is like the hardest thing we could ever do as human beings. Like, how can we live if we have to eat healthy? It's too hard. It's too expensive. Getting them in there when they're young develops patterns, right? So neurological, right? Neuroplasticity, of what is possible so they can keep it going into the future. Because as they eat right, they're not going to fight you as much because they enjoy eating what they're able to make way more than they enjoy eating just whatever is made. They like being involved. And all of those things bring in joy, happiness, challenge them with creativity, letting them succeed, letting them fail with it is great for brain development and resilience, from not only preventing concussions, but also for mental health. It's going to go a long way on that side.
Oh, I love hearing all that. I mean, it's kind of what I say. It's just a neat twist coming from brain development. Dr. Zimmerman, I love to leave parents with a message of hope so that we're feeling optimistic and positive at the end. So if you could encourage parents in one way, what would it be?
There's so much that you can do. Just let your kids be creative and don't be so afraid. Yes, there's issues with concussions in sports, but if you know how to be proactive about it, your kids can play sports in a safe manner. They can return in a safe manner. And because a lot of us, right, we want our kids to experience stuff that we experienced in our childhood, because a lot of people, their greatest memories were playing sports. You can let them do it too in a safe manner. You just need to have the knowledge and education or just the right guidance on how to be able to do that. So, because that's part of you too. You know, it's, yeah, you let your kids play sports for them, but you also do it for you too. Like, let's be honest, right? A lot of the things they do. So that is something you can do, because a lot of people are hesitant because we do know concussions create all these issues. And they're like, well, I really want them to, but I don't know how. Well, you can. And just be proactive, as we've talked about, with strengthening their brain and fueling it right.
The fact that you've given us a sense of being able to have some control, that we can be proactive, that it's not completely out of our hands and just left up to chance. And if our kid gets a concussion, they're done. I mean, people like nothing less than being completely out of control. So, just giving us some strategies is so empowering, so important, and definitely a message of hope. Thank you so very much, Dr. Zimmerman. Now, how should people find you if they want to learn more, or if they are lucky enough to be able to work with you in person?
Yeah, so I'm on all social media at Dr. Spencer Zimmerman. And then my clinic is Peak Brain and Body, and it's in the Tampa area in Florida.
Lucky Tampaites who might get to work with you if they need you. Thank you so much, Dr. Zimmerman. It's been a pleasure.
Yep, thanks for having me. It was great to be on with you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. I hope your brain feels fed and your heart feels full, and that you feel connected, knowing that there are other parents on this journey with you. We're just trying to raise healthy, independent adults. And the next time you think, man, there is no handbook for this job, now there is the Healthy Parenting Handbook. Look up the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please leave a review, my friends, as that helps other parents who need this information to find us. And of course, subscribe. That's a huge help. You can also look for our shorts as a reel on Instagram at Katie Kimball Kids Cook, or subscribe to the Healthy Parenting Handbook Shorts channel on YouTube. You'll get those bite-sized portions of healthy parenting advice.